A very good evening to all our viewers and welcome to this Friday's edition of Primetime News, coming to you live from our Newsfirst studios in Colombo. I'm Arundhati Mudanayaka. Let's start off with a look at the stories making headlines this evening.
Newsfirst headlines. Main sponsor.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
Chinese ambassador visits Adams Bridge, says it is the end and also the beginning.
This is the end, is also the beginning.
Ministers Vimal, Vasudeva and Gamampilla have disregarded collective responsibility by opposing LNG deal, Attorney General tells court.
එක සාමූහික වගකීම කඩකිරීමක් බව ඇත්තක් අපි බැලුවේ සාමූහික වගකීමද ලොකු හෘද සාක්ෂියද ලොකු කියන එකයි.
Two consignments of gas in Sri Lanka's waters. Gas supplies affected. Appeal court instructs gas companies to recall substandard gas cylinders. 7 UN rapporteurs make 5 recommendations to amend Prevention of Terrorism Act.
Newsfirst headlines. Main sponsor.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
And now the stories in detail. Chinese Ambassador Key Zhenghong visited the Adams Bridge between India and Sri Lanka as he ended his visit to the northern province today.
Chinese Ambassador to Sri Lanka Key Zhenghong visited the Navy camp in Thalwapadi in Mannar as part of his 3-day visit to the north. The ambassador had visited the Adams Bridge with some officials on a vessel operated by the Navy. The Chinese Embassy's Deputy Defense Attaché, Colonel Gao Bing, and Chief Political Officer Luo Chong were among the officials. The team had departed from the Navy camp and visited the Adams Bridge after travelling 17 nautical miles by moving to a smaller vessel during the journey. They had visited the third sandbank along the chain of limestone shoals that make up the bridge.
The Chinese ambassador to Sri Lanka, His Excellency Key Zhenghong, visited the Adams Bridge in Mannar today as a part of his tour to the north of Sri Lanka. Now, he was escorted by the Sri Lanka Army and the Sri Lanka Navy. Now, the significance of that location is that it is the closest point in Sri Lanka to the borders of India. 32 kilometers from this location towards that side is the borders of South India.
The Chinese ambassador and his team had returned to shore after about 20 minutes. These were the comments expressed by the Chinese ambassador to Newsfirst upon returning to the Thalwapadi Navy camp.
This is the end, is also the beginning.
The Adams Bridge is a 30-kilometer long chain of limestone shoals from Thalaimana to India's town of Dhanushkodi. It is also known as Ram Setu or Rama's Bridge. Out of the 16 limestone shoals, one half belongs to Sri Lanka, while the rest belongs to India. Subramaniam Swamy, a senior leader of India's Bharatiya Janata Party who visited Sri Lanka recently, had tweeted, "What stops Modi from declaring the Ram Setu as a national heritage monument?" In March, Indian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka Gopal Bagle and a team of officials had visited the Adams Bridge and even engaged in religious rituals.
As Chinese and Indian diplomats have expressed their strong interest in the Adams Bridge, the LNG deal signed with an American company has garnered an equal amount of attention. The fundamental rights petition filed against the selling of 40% of shares of the Yugadanavi power plant to an American company named New Fortress Energy Incorporated were taken up today. These petitions have been filed naming the Cabinet of Ministers as respondents, and notably, Ministers Vasudeva Nanayakkara, Udaya Gammanpila and Vimal Weerawansa recently filed objections in support of these applications. Attorney General Sanjay Rajaratnam, who was presenting facts in court, said that the affidavits these ministers submitted supporting the applications were unconstitutional. The Attorney General also said that the ministers have disregarded the collective responsibility of the Cabinet of Ministers as a whole. The Attorney General pointed out that it is a very serious situation when attempts are being made to obtain a constitutional order from the court by submitting unconstitutional documents, and he urged the court to dismiss the documents that were submitted by the ministers. President's Counsel Udita Igalahewa, who represented the three ministers, pointed out that a cabinet memorandum in relation to this matter was not passed in the cabinet. He also said that a cabinet memorandum was not presented to the cabinet as the ministers needed ample time to object or present facts in this regard. President's Counsel Igalahewa said although the cabinet secretary received a cabinet paper in this regard, Minister Vimal Weerawansa did not receive a cabinet paper. The petition will be taken up again on the 10th, 12th and the 13th of January next year.
Minister Udaya Gammanpila reiterated his opposition to the LNG deal during an event in Hanwalla today. It is true that this goes against collective responsibility, but we must consider whether collective responsibility outweighs our conscience and the promises that we have made to the people. If the president feels we are doing something wrong, he can sack us. We made this decision on behalf of the country by taking the risk of knowing that we can be removed from our positions. We have told court through an affidavit that a cabinet paper was not tabled on this.
Two ships carrying LNG gas continue to be anchored in the seas of Kalpitia. Litrogas Lanka Limited said it had not supplied gas cylinders for nearly a week as it doesn't have stocks of gas, but it said that it will resume gas supplies tomorrow. Lav's Gas is also supplying less than 25% of its regular capacity to the market. Authority had rejected 3,200 metric tons of LP gas that arrived from Bangladesh on the Epic Walter tanker as a gas leak detecting ordnance Mercaptan was not up to standard. Tests are being carried out on samples obtained from the Pericles oil tanker carrying 2,000 metric tons of LP gas.
There are two ships. One ship was cleared today by the Consumer Affairs Authority and regulatory agencies. They visited the ship, tested samples and cleared one ship. Another ship can't reach the shore because of strong waves. The relevant steps will be taken tomorrow. However, we have taken the relevant measures to resume production from tomorrow.
The appeal court today ordered gas companies to only distribute gas cylinders approved by the Sri Lanka Standards Institute. This is after taking up a petition filed by Nagananda Kurituakku. The appeal court also ordered gas companies to recall the gas cylinders that have been released to the market without meeting the SLSI standards. The companies were ordered to not charge consumers when replacing the recalled gas cylinders with new ones approved by the Sri Lanka Standard Institute. The writ petition is to be taken up for further examination on the 26th of January. The chairman of the Litrogas Lanka and Lav's Gas companies, the Director General of the Industrial Technology Institute and the chairman of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation was summoned by the Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka today. This is to give evidence in connection to two complaints filed by the Young Journalists Association of Sri Lanka on the quality of gas cylinders.
Litrogas and Lav's Gas were summoned as witnesses. Litro is a state-run company. Therefore, we asked for Litrogas to be named as respondents. The Human Rights Commission agreed to that. We asked for the Police and the Public Utilities Commission to be declared as respondents as well.
This was the response shown by the chairman of Litrogas Lanka and Lav's Gas companies today.
ඔබතුමාලා සාක්ෂි ලබා දුන්නාද මොකද උනේ? දැන් තව කොච්චර කාල ගෑස් උපුරනවද මේ විදියට? ඇයි ඔබතුමාලා වගකීමක් නැතුව මාධ්‍ය මගහැරලා යන උත්තරයක් දෙන්නේ නැහැ නේ ඔබතුමාලා. මාධ්‍යට කතා කරන්න බැරිද? ඔබතුමාලා
සභාපතිතුමා මගහැරලා දැන් මේ නිවුස් බලන් ඉන්න මේවට ඔබතුමාලායි මේක ගැන නිහඬ.
ඇයි ජනතාවට ගින්දර දීලා ඔබතුමාලා ওই විදිහට මාධ්‍ය මගහැරලා යන්නේ?
ඒ සියලු පාර්ශ්වයන් එක්ක අපි සාකච්ඡා.
His view was that there are no standards of gas cylinders or gas at present. We instructed the companies to adjust the composition to the accepted levels. We will collect all the details from them and provide a comprehensive report to the President.
සියලුම පාර්ශ්වයන් මේ අඩුපාඩු සකස් කරලා ජනතාවගේ බිය නැති කිරීම සඳහා පියවර ගන්නවා කියන එක තමයි එයාලා අපි ඉස්සරහා එකඟ වුණේ.
The Women for Rights movement staged a protest opposite the Consumer Affairs Authority over the dangers faced by people because of gas explosions.
All women are fearing for their lives in the country. That fear was created by supplying substandard gas cylinders to the market. The government and those responsible are silent about this. The Consumer Affairs Authority Act grants powers to take action if substandard products are being supplied and if it is causing harm to the people.
The protesters handed over a memorandum to an officer at the Consumer Affairs Authority.
මේ ඔබතුමාන්ලට දැන් මේ ලිපිය බාර දීලා යන්න තමයි අපි ආවේ මේ පාරිභෝගික සේවා අධිකාරිය මහජනතාවට.
The Consumer Affairs Authority is responsible to the people. It is run on public funds. They have been silent about this. When we came here to meet with the chairman, a deputy director met us saying that he isn't there. He said that the chairman has gone to meet the president's secretary on filing action against both gas companies. We came here to show our objection towards the failure of this authority to take action.
නොගැනීම සම්බන්ධව අපේ විරෝධය ප්‍රකාශ කරන්න අපි මේ වෙලාවට ආවේ.
Cost of vegetables at the Manikumbar Economic Centre in Katugastota had gone up because of the drop in harvest. Chilies cost 750 rupees. Carrots cost 450 rupees. Many shops are closed. Vegetables are not being sold because the cost is high. We have received less than 100,000 kilos of vegetables. When we sell carrots at 450 rupees here, it will have to be sold at 600 rupees in the market. Vegetables had been sold at higher rates in Peta as well. Traders say that they could only sell vegetables of poor quality at low rates.
ඔක්කොම ගණන් ගිහලා තියෙන එළවලු මිනිස්සු පොඩ පොඩ තමයි ගන්න 250 100ක් කටියට මිල කියනවත් අපිට අමාරු කටිය අපිටත් බයලා යනවා මොකද මෙච්චර මිල තියලා විකුණන්නේ කියලා.
අවුමිලි 100 රුපියල් 100යි. පත් ජනතාව හැමදාම අසරණයි. සතුටට ගියාම බඩු නැහැ.
ගන්න බෑ මුකුත් ගත්තේ නැහැ. මිල ගණන් ගොඩක් වැඩි.
It is reported that a milk powder shortage is seen in the market. Vendors point out that they do not receive sufficient stocks of milk powder to sell to the consumers.
Many consumers come and go empty-handed. Some people ask for milk powder for their children. They ask us whether we have any. Even we don't have any milk powder. So how can we give them?
This was the queue to purchase milk powder in Nugegoda today.
දැන් පැයකටත් වැඩි මේ තුන්වෙනි පාර ආවේ. උදෙත් ආවා එනකොට පොලිම ගන්න බැරි වුණා. ඔය පොඩි එකෙක් නිසා එන්නේ නැත්තම් එන්නේ නැහැ.
අපි මේව ඡන්දෙත් දීලා අපි මේ පොලිම ඉන්නවා කියන්නේ ලැජ්ජයි කියන්නේ. ඔව්වේ පිච්චි සබ තමයි විඳින්නේ.
මේ රාජකාරිය නිමාඩු දාලා තමයි පොලිමේ ඉන්නේ මේ බඩු ටික ගන්න ඕන හන්ද.
රස්සාවෙන් හෙට අනිද්දාට එළියට දායි දන්නේ උඹලා රස්සාව කරන්නේ නැතුව පිටි පොලිමේද ඉන්නේ කියලා.
The shortage of fertilizer and agrochemicals have affected farmers badly, potentially impacting the supply of food across the country. Farmers haven't received fertilizer 2 months into the Maha cultivation season, raising doubts over a proper harvest. People in Tinigama in Bandaravela earn a living by cultivating and selling vegetables. But the lack of fertilizer and agrochemicals have left their crops in utter ruin.
We don't have fertilizer or agrochemicals to cultivate vegetables. We must be given chemicals or organic fertilizer. Look at the poor growth of these tomato plants without fertilizer. The troubles faced by the people are growing daily.
The situation at tea cultivations in Ahaliyagoda in Ratnapura is no different. The shortage of fertilizer has sparked concerns of a good harvest. Tea cultivators say that they have no source of income as the cost of goods continue to increase. The production of tea has dropped by half. We are told that fertilizer can be bought between 6,000 and 7,000 rupees. There is no point in purchasing it at that cost. Why are MPs and ministers leaving the country while problems continue to persist?
Your party member says there is a dollar shortage, but the finance minister has gone overseas. It has been reported that more than 60 MPs are to go overseas.
I don't know whether there are 60 MPs. I am the chief government whip. They must inform us. The president can go wherever he wants. If anyone wants, they can undertake personal or diplomatic visits. If there are people who need to visit their children, they should be able to do it. Can they ask their neighbor to do that?
People have started to voice their concerns, seeking solutions to the never-ending crisis in the country. The life and death struggle of the people in Arulagangvilla, Polonnarwa because of wild elephant encroachments is not a new problem. Residents gathered at the Mother Oya Road in Arulagangvilla demanding authorities to provide a solution to this problem. Residents of many villages including Damminna, Arunapura, Nidanwala, Ihalawawa and Pupudugama are suffering because of wild elephants that encroach into their villages from the Madru Oya Reserve. These helpless people backed their grievances and went to the Mahaveli Divisional Secretariat. However, the officers of the Divisional Secretariat office were in an online meeting when the residents arrived. As a result, they were not able to lend an ear to the people. As their efforts were not fruitful, the residents arrived at the Dammina junction. They blocked the Arulagangvilla Madru Oya Road and started a protest. A vehicle bearing the logo of the Mahaveli authority arrived at the scene only to turn back. The police officers who arrived at the scene had no option but to redirect vehicles to alternate routes. The protesters dispersed after the police officers promised the protesters to grant them an opportunity to hold discussions with the Dibulagale Divisional Secretariat.
Moving on to other local stories, Sri Lanka's predicted economic growth rate for next year is the lowest among South Asian countries. This is according to data published by the Asian Development Bank.
The Asian Development Bank has compared the predicted economic growth rate of South Asian countries for 2022. Maldives has predicted an economic growth rate of 15%, which is the highest among South Asian countries. Sri Lanka stands at the bottom of the list with a predicted growth rate of 3.4%. There is no data on Afghanistan.
The key reason why we expect Sri Lanka to have a meager economic growth is because of the external sector vulnerabilities. Some of the export-oriented industries depend on the imports. So as a result of the current bottleneck, we expect the industry, the production level of the industries to go down. With this higher inflation level, the real incomes are going to suffer. So people's purchasing power is going to get affected. And in return, the company performance will be affected. We think if the growth is going to be sluggish, this will have an impact on the poverty. The poverty will be deepened, especially among the urban poor. We will see a little bit of a higher poverty level. We should start with implementing sound economic policies exchange rate policy is also a very critical. Another area that the policymakers can focus on, and also given very little attention, is to promote transparency and reduce corruption.
The ICRA Lanka rating agency had recently said that Sri Lanka's inflation for November this year stood at 9.9%. It noted it's the highest since July of 2012. The rising inflation rates have caused the cost of goods to increase in the market.
Time for a short commercial break. Stay with News First. We will be right back.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
Human Rights Watch says the European Union should work with international partners to prevent more human rights abuses in Sri Lanka.
Human Rights Watch says the European Union has a historic opportunity to press Sri Lanka's government to meet its human rights obligations. The European Parliament had recently adopted a resolution urging the EU Commission to consider the temporary withdrawal of the GSP Plus tax relief facility given to Sri Lanka. The resolution had made specific reference to the Prevention of Terrorism Act and human rights abuses in the country. Human Rights Watch says the EU should not allow itself to be hoodwinked by a sham PTA reform. 7 UN rapporteurs have also urged Sri Lanka to amend the Prevention of Terrorism Act in line with international standards. In a joint statement, the UN's special rapporteur said they regret that the Sri Lankan government has not adopted the recommended corrective measures over the Prevention of Terrorism Act. It proposed 5 main recommendations to ensure that the PTA is amended in line with international law obligations. The UN rapporteurs recommended to amend the definition of terrorism and rescind the language on terrorism. They added that the PTA could interfere with freedom of speech as it doesn't define what speech is prohibited. The joint statement said that provisions on detention should be amended to prevent arbitrary arrests and detentions that go against international laws. It added that the PTA should be amended to ensure that conditions that increase the likelihood of torture are remedied. The special rapporteurs also said that the PTA should be amended in line with the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This comes in the run-up to the 49th UN Human Rights Council session set to begin in February next year.
A political prisoner was acquitted by the Negombo High Court on Tuesday after serving 15 years in prison. The prisoner was a 45-year-old resident of Jaffna. He was arrested in Colombo in 2006 over charges of smuggling weapons to Colombo. The suspect was then charged at the Negombo High Court under the Prevention of Terrorism Act.
Former Navy Commander Admiral of the Fleet Wasantha Karannagada assumed duties as the Governor of the North-Western Province.
The new governor assumed duties at the Governor's office in the North-Western Province. He served as the commander of the Sri Lanka Navy from 2005 to 2009 and as the former Sri Lankan ambassador to Japan.
Are plans underway to delay the provincial council elections by a year? These were the views expressed in the political forum today.
අලත්පාලන මැතිවරණය කල් දැමීමේ සඳහා මොකක් හරි තීරණයක් කරන් තියෙනවද ඒක කැබිනට් තීරණයක් හරි
නෑ මෙහෙමයි ඇත්තටම කැබිනට් තීරණයක් හෝ
A cabinet or political decision has not been made. As a member of the Committee on Electoral Law Reforms, I can say that we have not been able to reach a decision on certain matters. The President has instructed us to formulate an electoral system that is favorable to everyone.
ඔබතුමා උපදෙස් දීලා තිනවා රටේ සෑම පුරවැසියෙකුට පිළිගන්න පුළුවන් බොහොම විනිවිද භාවයෙන් තියෙන සාධනීය මැතිවරණ ක්‍රමයක් අඳුන්වලා දෙන්න කියලා.
A decision has been made to delay the provincial council elections. We are facing an economic crisis. It's difficult to survive. The government may have made this decision by considering that, but we are not in favor of delaying the elections. It affects democracy. There is a good and bad side to this. We haven't postponed the provincial council elections. That's wrong. Who said that? Was it Anwar Kumar Dissanayake or Sajid Premadasa? We haven't been able to conduct the provincial elections as the previous government changed the electoral laws using people like Rauf Hakim. There is nothing new about what they did to the Provincial Councils Act. We like to conduct the election. When we conduct the election, they will stop making such remarks. A cabinet paper has not been tabled so far, but there is no reason to table the cabinet paper. The law has given powers to the Minister of Provincial Councils to postpone the elections by an year. We are having a problem of loosening the knot created by Ranil Wickremesinghe during the previous government. I feel that the government must conduct the election at the right time. That's because the opinion of the people must be sought. They must be able to express their opinion. We won't support efforts to avoid an election.
Were the revelations at the Committee on Public Accounts a reason to prorogue Parliament? Opposition leader Sajid Premadasa expressed the following views in Veerakatia today.
Opposition leader Sajid Premadasa declared open the Samik Janabala Vege's office in Veerakatia today. We left at around 11 last night. When we returned this morning, we saw that there were slight damages to our banners. We know that they are trying to stop our activities by causing these damages. Regardless of the attempts that they take to destroy us, they won't be able to do that. The opposition leader expressed these views during the event. What were the matters uncovered by the Committee on Public Accounts in the past? They exposed several shortcomings. The investigations of the committee proved that they couldn't resolve the human-elephant conflict successfully by spending 490 million. For 4 foreign direct investment projects, they had used funds without the approval of the Treasury. A compost fertilizer scam had taken place at the Kurunegala Municipal Council. 65,102 acres of land in the Mutrajawala wetlands have been sold to companies at 500 rupees an acre. The committee revealed that any government official had not been investigated for these irregularities. Instead of the tax on double cab vehicles, they have imposed taxes on other vehicles. The losses caused by failing to tax a vehicle is 1 million. There were 3,000 vehicles imported. That amounts to 3 billion in revenue losses. This committee exposed the irregularities in the process, starting from the importation of vehicles to their registration. The company had also highlighted the absence of a proper plan at the Inland Revenue Department, Department of Excise and the Customs Department to generate revenue. Now you can understand why the Parliament was prorogued to halt the functioning of the COPA committee. That was because those details would come to light.
The duty of the Committee on Public Accounts, also known as COPA, is to monitor the expenditure and the allocation of funds within the Parliament. The COPA will look into the management, efficiency and the financial discipline of ministries, departments, provincial councils and provincial council bodies. The former chairman of the Committee on Public Accounts was Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna MP Tessa Vitarana, MPs Uday Gammanpila, Duminda Dissanayake, Dayasiri Jayasekara, Lasantha Alagiyawanna, Sudarshani Fernando Pulle, Shehan Semasinghe, Prasanna Ranavira, Tisatha Nayaka, Harin Fernando, Niroshan Pereira, Faisal Qasim, Ashok Kabesinghe, Buddhika Patirana, Kader Mastan, Mohammad Muzammil, Sivanyanam Sridharan, Upul Galapatti, BYJ Ratnasekara, Veerasumana Veerasekara, Ranjit Bandara and Harini Amrasurya were the other members of the Committee on Public Accounts. There have been instances where Mercedes-Benz cars have entered the Sri Lanka customs by paying an entry tax for an ambulance. Public money has been looted to that extent in this country. The Committee on Public Accounts can only make recommendations to the relevant ministry. It is the relevant minister who has to take the appropriate action. For an example, I suggested that people must express their fair opinion when it comes to estimations. By doing so, there is an inflow of money to the government as well. Even though I have made such recommendations, we cannot guarantee that those will be implemented. Some people say that the Parliament was prorogued to remove us from our positions. That can be true. That can be false as well. We do not know. It was revealed at the Committee on Public Accounts that direct foreign funds have been spent on 4 projects without the approval of the Treasury. presence of officials from the Attorney General's department when the Committee on Public Accounts convened for the final time before the prorogation of Parliament is a significant fact. The Committee on Public Accounts have to run checks on 820 institutions. These institutions have massive state funds gathering issues and massive fraud and corruption allegations. Then we decided to hold discussions with the Attorney General to determine whether legal action can be taken against such corrupt institutions. A state council representing the Attorney General held discussions with us last week. What we want is not only to reveal these corrupt dealings before the country, but to punish the perpetrators and retrieve this lost money. I asked the government to implement a process to continue our work in the future as well. I asked the government not to change the chairman and the members of these committees.
Government parliamentarians commented on this matter today. If the previous chairmen are not appointed to those committees, then we can say that steps were taken to protect those dealings. All committees will be reappointed when Parliament is reconvened. There is no obstruction to resume the work that they were doing. I don't believe that anyone is trying to change the decision of these committees. I can fearlessly say that the committee made the right decisions.
How would you feel if you didn't have access to clean drinking water? And if the water you drank made you fatally ill? That's the plight of the people in the rural hamlet of Ihaladikkala in Matale, but not for long.
For about 300 families in the Ihaladikkala village in the Matale district, quenching their thirst has never been easy. The villagers, who are mostly farmers or daily wage laborers, have been struck by the lack of access to clean drinking water. Although clean water is a luxury in the Sri Lanka's metropolis, these villagers have to spend their hard-earned money to buy it. Some have no option but to walk more than 3 kilometers in search of water. This long-standing issue has caused chronic kidney diseases among many villagers, while some have died. Today, Gammadda stepped in to put the people of Ihaladikkala out of their misery. A foundation stone for a reverse osmosis water purification plant was laid at the Ihaladikkala Primary School today. Gammadda would like to thank the kind donor who came forward to support this cause. Venerable Kosine Jinananda Thero expressed his delight at the project that has brought a smile among the villagers.
This issue was constantly raised as we were fed up of informing the politicians about this. Both the village and the country lacks a good leader. I very respectfully remember the memory of late chairman of the Capital Maharaja Group, Mr. Raja Mahendran. The future belongs to the younger generation. I am happy that thanks to Gammadda, at least future generations will have clean water to drink.
For over a decade, the Gammadda movement has been embedded in rural Sri Lanka, always listening to the people and always acting on the truth. The strength of Gammadda are the people of Sri Lanka.
Moving on to news overseas, the US Congress passed a together with our interpreter this evening, Taraka Gabriel. Good night.